What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Tastes Like Music. Album of the week, week number 2. Last week we talked about the Mon Laferte record. And if you missed that video, what this is us reviewing records chosen by patrons over on Patreon. Every week we'll be reviewing a record selected by a different member over there. This week we're talking about Steve Hackett's Spectral Mornings record from 1979. I believe this is his third solo record. If you aren't prog savvy, Steve Hackett was a member of Genesis. He played on 6 Genesis records. He was a member, I believe, up until 77. Yeah, so I had never heard this record. I don't think I've ever heard any Steve Hackett solo records, actually. So this was a new adventure for me. How about for you?
Yeah, this was I don't know if I've heard an entire, I know I've heard some songs here and there from Steve Hackett. Obviously, I love what he did with Genesis for most of his time there. So Nursery Crime 2, Wind and Wuthering, and I guess he was on the EP, Watch That Cricket or whatever the hell it's called, from 77, some of the leftovers. And, I love his sound, I love his tone. Love his playing. Wish he never left Genesis, obviously, but anytime these prog guitarists go solo, it just leaves me wanting more. So interesting to see. He kind of quit Genesis really, before they exploded in the Phil Collins era. They were pretty popular, obviously, but he wanted more autonomy and to do his own thing, and he felt like his contributions were sort of getting pushed under the rug by the big boys, Phil Collins and Rutherford and Tony Banks. So he set off on his own. This is his second solo album. And there's a lot of cool stuff on here, I will say. If you know Steve Hackett's sound, like he hasn't changed it up much here. Some variety in what he's doing, but it reminds me a lot of the sound of Genesis from 1972 to 1978, even after he left. He kind of was channeling them still, and they kind of are on the same path a little bit. So I like this one. I don't know how much I love it. It's hard for me to determine like how much I like this because I really did like when you get that not wash, that kind of spectral, that's a good name for an album actually. That otherworldly, majestic beauty, all that reverb and that just the way it sounds is the shimmering nature. It's hard to even describe. When you pair that with the Mellotron, which he does a lot here, it's just some of my favorite like sounding music you can possibly have. The first track, Every Day, very Genesis sounding. He's got like a Steve Howe-esque guitar solo, which is interesting. And then he goes into the outro solo, and it's just like classic Steve Hackett. The vocals, not my favorite. He could have gotten a stronger vocalist for this project. I think 5 of the tracks are instrumental anyway, but it could have used a stronger vocalist like a Phil Collins or a Peter Gabriel to really put it over the top. And some stuff like Virgin and the Gypsy has some really cool instrumentation and some like real nice vocal harmonies, but they're only there for like a minute. And there's like this twee sounding flute at the end. It's like less flute, more squealing guitar, waves of Steve Hackettness. Reminds you a little too much of Selling England by the Pound, which I do not like that much. And a couple throwaway tracks like Red Flower of Takai Blooms Everywhere brings in like that oriental sounding instrumentation. But you get some mellotone on that and throughout most of the album, so that kind of saves it. The music hall meets the future of the Ballad of Decomposing Man. Kind of works for me. It's kind of fun. It's got like this vocoder backing vocal part and this music box piano, and there's some harmonica, and it's really strange, but in like that classic kind of fun Genesis way that Peter Gabriel would kind of do some voices and Phil Collins would do that like Cockney accent a little bit. You have the Bay of Cordoba, which is on the second half, kind of kicks it off, and it's pretty ordinary. Tiger Moth's cool. I love the Mellotron in the intro. Some weird like shooting star synth sounds, kind of dated but kind of charming. Closing track, the title track, more just great guitar. It's an instrumental, more Mellotron. So I mean, all in all, I think it's a cool album. I don't know if I'm at 4 stars. It's like right there, but I mean, it just makes me wish he had stuck with Genesis longer because what it's missing is all the things that Genesis brought, which is like good songwriting and like a strong vocalist and great drums. And I mean, there's some of that here, but I think all in all, it's definitely a step down from everything that Genesis had done and was doing basically. So it's tough. It's like it's right on the verge of 4 stars. I don't know if I want to commit to 4 stars, but when you get that Hackett guitar sound and the Mellotron together, I got to go back and like count how many minutes of that takes up the album and how many of that is kind of like the weak singing, and then I'll make a final determination. But it's 3.5 to 4 stars somewhere there.
Yeah, so I mostly enjoyed this record. I think it's a pretty good listen every day. Like you said, really cool proggy rocker, really big full sound. There's some like cool deep synth stuff. I think it's synth. It might just be a bass, but uh yeah, sounds really good. Killer drumming from John Shearer on that track. The Virgin and the Gypsy is really cool. A little more of an English folk feel on that one with the layered 12 strings, and Hackett's using a Roland GR500 guitar synthesizer for the solo on that track, which sounds really cool. There's some flute on it from John Hackett. Also love the harmonies on this track from Dick Cadbury and Steve Hackett himself. The Red Flower of Tai Che is pretty cool. Eastern influenced. Hackett's playing a Cantonese koto on that track. Also some Mellotron on there. Um, but this is when it starts to kind of uh, reveal the main problem of the record for me, which is everything's pretty good and listenable, but it's really just all over the place stylistically. I mean, this track has little to no resemblance to Every Day, which opens the record. And that continues happening throughout the record. Like Ballad of Decomposing Man is just like this completely different music hall thing. Clocks is pretty cool. It's got like this Pink Floyd-esque ticking clocks opening the track. You got these big Moog Taurus pedals and a cool John Shearer drum solo at the end. Lost Time in Cordoba, classical guitar and flute duet, which is nice. It's pleasant, but again, it very, very much feels like a guitarist's solo album where it's really heavily reliant on musicianship and not songwriting, like you said. A lot of cool playing here. It's all pretty enjoyable. There's nothing on this record that I was like didn't like, but it doesn't have like really anything to say. And stylistically, it's just bouncing all around. So yeah, for me, I can't get to 4. It's a high 3.5. There's tons of cool guitar playing and it sounds cool. And I don't even mind Peter Hicks, that's his name, right? The singer. I don't even mind his voice that much. I'm totally fine with it. I mean, he's not an elite level singer like your Peter Gabriels or John Andersons or whoever, but uh perfectly pleasant. But yeah, it's just not quite uh you know, I don't know. It doesn't feel weighty enough to really be great.
It feels a lot like a solo guitarist who used to be in a prog band's like work. Like this is usually what you get from these, these people who leave these big bands and go off on their own, and it's never quite there. Like it's got the cool stuff that you remember from when they were in that big band, but like it constantly over and over, like it's just the same thing, and it's always the songwriting that's just like not quite there, and you know why, like they should have been or they were in that band with those members.
It is worth saying though that like it doesn't entirely feel like some former prog band member putting a record out in the 90s. It does still feel like in the prime. Like his playing is top form. So it's better than some things you might imagine. Not quite peak. So 3.5. Really liked listening to it. It was a cool pick. I don't know if I mentioned it came from Tavi, everybody's favorite Finn. So thanks for the pick. It was enjoyable. Glad I got to check it out. 3.5, solid. Kicking off this season of Album of the Week with two 3.5s. Haven't disliked anything yet. See if we can keep that rolling. I believe Grant is up next. So if people don't know this that aren't on the Discord, but Grant's first pick was a big swing and a miss for me. I really hated it. I won't say what it was. We'll just I really it was my least favorite of all the picks the first time through the order. Tavi's too. Tavi had a nice bounce back with this because Tavi's chose some Christian metal in the first season, and I was not a fan of that very much either. So Tavi is redeemed. Can Grant redeem himself? We will find out next week. If you've heard Spectral Mornings, let us know what you think of it. Leave us a comment. Or if you go and check it out now after this video, stop back and let us know how you feel about it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you'd like to join Patreon or our Discord yourself, you can check the video description and find the link to Patreon there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.